Yo, guys, what's going on? Coach Jamie here, and I am so excited to have you here listening to my podcast, Make Time for Your Mind with Coach Jamie, where we will be talking about all things mindset, vulnerability, personal development, ways we can become better individuals. And sometimes in that process, we'll get heavy, sometimes we'll have fun, and sometimes I will be challenging your perspective. The goal, no matter what, though, is to leave you better than you were before you tuned in. So, with that being said, let's dive in. Yo, thank you guys for being here. Super stoked because I know you usually only see my mug, but I'm bringing another mug on with me. And we're going to be talking about all things red flags in a world that uses that phrase all the time. And what I'm really stoked about too in this process is that I am bringing on my friend and fellow coach, Dr. Nguyen, with me, and we're just gonna have a conversation. We're gonna talk it out. We're gonna talk about our icks. We're gonna talk about the pros, the cons, whatever. We're just gonna talk it out, and would love for you guys to listen along and share your thoughts along with us as you tune in. So, Megan, thank you for being here.
I'm here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, you want to share with, I guess, the people who are in my world who you are, what you do, why you're here with me hanging out?
Yep. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here. Ecstatic. My name is Dr. Nguyen, and what I do is I help clients. I'm with Golden Sheep Life Coaching, and I help people go from point A to B while building up clarity and strategy to go from B to Z on their own, because if I'm doing my job right, they won't need me for much longer. So it's really focused, intentional time where we build up a system that works for you that they can bring with them for the rest of their lives. Because life is rough. Life is rough, but it's also very beautiful too. So how do we navigate all of it? So that's what I do in a nutshell.
Okay. And before we even dive in on the topic of red flags, relationship status.
I am in a relationship. I have a boyfriend, and we've been together for a little over 4 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And that's relevant because it's a perspective.
Yes. And so I guess for anybody who is listening who doesn't know about mine, before we dive into this too, I'm almost the opposite, where I have been single for going on 4.5 years now. Have not had a serious relationship prior to or since then, which was on and off for 1.5 years with a gentleman. And then prior to that, I was single for 4.5 years. And prior to that was in an on and off, not so good relationship for about 5 years. So that's my relationship history as we enter where we're at. So let's go.
Let's dive into it. Buzzwords, red flags. What do you all think about this word and just dating climate? What's it like now? Like, let's just dive in.
Okay.
Coach Jamie, let's go.
So, to me, okay, I guess I think somebody mentioning red flags is the biggest red flag.
Ooh, why?
I hate red flags.
Okay.
Kicking it to the good old RAS, the reticular activating system. If you are going to buy a car, right? Mm-hmm. You show up to the dealership and then all of a sudden, like, you see this blue Jeep and you're like, dang, that's a cool blue Jeep. I've never seen one like that before. I'm going to buy it because nobody out there has a blue Jeep. They're like, but I'm going to take some time to think about it. You pull up out of that lot. And then all of a sudden, between the 20-minute drive from the dealership to your home, you see 3 blue Jeeps. Why is that? The reticular activating system. What you give attention to is what you're going to see more of. So if you're already entering a relationship or trying to enter a relationship and all you're focusing on is their red flags, be prepared to see red everywhere. And so as somebody who is, I don't know where that came from. I don't even think I've ever said that before. Look at what you bring out of me.
Yeah. Error, red. Okay.
Yes. But like, so, I mean, as somebody who is single and very much like actively trying to date, I'm very intentional. And I do have a sense of standard of what I will or will not, allow when dating somebody. But at the same time, it's like, he didn't do this. That's a red flag. I'm not talking to man. You didn't even give the dude a freaking chance, right? Like there's some basic, because I think we mentioned this on another when we were talking about ambition, right? Where it's like, is this person ambitious or are they doing just what's actually required of them? But I think that there's a space for discernment of recognizing like, no, like these are just standard things that somebody should be doing and how you should show up in a relationship. Like, I think it's okay to have that type of standard. But if there's like one way of like, he didn't put apostrophes in his text messaging, that's a red flag. Right, but what if he's a really great human and like he really loves and respects the people in his life and he works really hard? I think now the apostrophes are like them lacking, that's totally okay. But you potentially just missed out on a really good thing because you gave more attention to a red flag. So yeah, for me personally, I hate red flags. What's your thoughts on red flags?
When you were talking, so my brain, I think in analogies and I think in Taylor Swift lyrics. So there's my brain. There you go. That's what my MRI would look like. But what came to mind was a hammer. Incredibly powerful, has its place, but if you use it to smash everything, it's not going to be helpful. So I slightly disagree in the sense that I do think there's a place in talking about red flags. There's a place. I didn't say there was a complete purpose in using it every day all the time.
I like that.
So if a client, for instance, comes to me and is really flustered and all over the place, whether they realize and recognize it or not, that's my starting place is, okay, what do you want? Most people are like, I want all these things. And then in their description, it indicates to me that they actually don't really know clearly what they want. And a lot of the stuff that we do as coaches is bring clarity to someone's life. Right. Part of the clarity process is, okay, how do we compartmentalize this to shelf it later? So I completely agree with you. We can't focus on just these red flags because then all you see is red everywhere, right? So I always have a client start, if they're flustered, in making a red, yellow, and green flag list.
Interesting.
Yeah, just to sort out your thoughts.
That's good. And
even if you're just starting there, not to focus on it, to say, okay, your red flags and even your green flags, when you meet the person for you, sometimes some of those items go to hell because they're a good human being. And now you don't care if he doesn't know how to cook or she, whoever, right? The yellow flags is a really interesting area of exploration because, as we know, the world we'd love for it to be black or white, but it's a blob of gray. The yellow is the gray. That what are some things, not necessarily that we're identifying in any of the categories about this potential partner, but it says a lot more about the person than it does the person you're seeking. So why are these coming up as yellow flags for you?
Absolutely. I agree with that.
So that's where I come from with like really knowing your red flags, because I think that helps you in your healing journey and therapeutic journey as well before you date, because I think you are what you attract in some ways.
Oh, without a doubt. And you are only capable of receiving the love that you think you deserve. So you're going to be attracted to the people that you're seeking validation from because that's all you think that you deserve.
Oh boy.
And I love that you said that, is that it all still boils back down to you. Actually, my pastor said this in a sermon a couple months back, is that for every behavior, there's a backstory.
Ooh.
And I love that. And so I think, again, this is why I feel so strongly, because excellent points. And I love that also, like, you're giving allotment for the place of red flags, because I think acknowledgement, or, kind of how I refer to it as discernment, is key. But you can't let that be your end all be all. And because I was, especially me being single, like a couple of areas where my brain went. And I have very much fallen to this. If somebody's in the military, that's a red flag. Ooh. Right? Like that's even, I have seen a lot, like whether it be on TikTok or like my friends and stuff like that, that if they're in the military, it's because they had a traumatic upbringing and they needed structure in their life. And the second they meet you, they want to get married, and then you're going to end up be cheated on because they're going to be gone and doing all these things. This entire narrative was formed around because of your experience of what you believe to be true about somebody that's in the military. But what if there's somebody who is in the military because they actually came from a really healthy background?
Yeah.
You now just ruled all of that out because of your assumption about who that person is. And I think also with the dating culture that we're in is that it's so easy for us to just dismiss people. Like, it kind of disgusts me. Like, and I'm just as guilty for it, right? Because it's natural for us to judge people. Like that's how we feel safe. That's how we know who to let in and whatnot. Like, that's and who we want to do life with. Like, that's part of the journey. But like, especially with dating apps, you literally are judging somebody in a split second because of what that first picture is. Oh, they're holding a fish from the boat in their opening picture. That's a red flag. They're wearing sunglasses. That's a red flag. They have a picture with their shirt off. That's a red flag. Right. But no offense. At the same time, for me, if somebody is willing to if I can see that chiseled body, like that to me screams that you respect yourself and you have a lot of self-discipline. That's an attractive quality to me.
Yeah.
As somebody who puts a lot of effort on their health and wellness. Now, don't get me wrong, if every single one of those are, okay, now maybe there is some self-absorption that's happening there, right? But again, I think it's just so quickly that people are going to judge, or like there's a friend of mine who he's got like a YouTube channel and he goes around and asks like very, very just touchy questions to people. And one of them is he'll walk up to like women, like bare minimum, what amount of money should a guy spend for you on a date?
Interesting.
And like he was doing this, I think it was like in Miami or something.
Oh gosh.
And and this woman was like $1,000. If
What?
he ain't taking me out and he ain't spending $1,000 on me, that's a red flag. And I'm like, girl, listen, I'm cool. I'm cool with getting to know somebody. Like if it would be on a dating app, let's FaceTime each other first. Let's save time.
Yeah.
Let's save time, because if already like we aren't communicating very well,
Yeah.
like at least we saved each other the time. I don't expect you to want to invest a whole bunch of money in me the first time meeting me, right? Or some of these other girls, and this is a very select group of people where they're like expecting this D1 athlete to fly them out and get their hair done for a first date. And if not, that's a red flag. Or if somebody is a construction worker, that's a red flag. Are you freaking kidding me? How dare you? Because they're not making tons of money. Now, all of a sudden, your expectation of somebody taking care of you is going to trump the quality of a good man. Like I've said this before on a couple of mine, like and even my posts of just kind of coming at women. As women, I think we need to do better. We shame our men a lot. Don't get me wrong. I think in a way, some of our men have gotten really weak. Girl, I'm going on a side tangent.
Oh, we are going there. Let's go there. Driving.
Yes. We're hitting the pedal hard. But don't get me wrong. This is not letting men off the hook, because I think there are a lot of men who have not carried out the masculinity that men should be kind of providing in. And that's also another subject that can be for another day, because everybody still has their purpose on how that they can show up in this world. That doesn't necessarily mean that everyone is supposed to be out there slitting the throats of bears and cooking food over a fire. But at the same time, like, if I want to be with a man that if like the world goes freaking chaotic, hopefully you know how to hunt. I don't know if I want to kill something, right? Like, I hope that would be the case. But no, like I think it's easy, and it's also something that's happening is that women are becoming stronger, and now they're attacking and blaming our men for everything. But like, as women, how are we showing up in a relationship? What red flags are you walking around with, girl? Because if you're going to be pointing out somebody else's red flags, you better be checking for your own as well.
Right.
So, and that to me, that's where it's going to level the playing field. Like, I won't have as big of an ick talking about somebody else's red flags if I'm making sure that I notice my red flags too. Exactly. Sometimes what I have done from like a dating perspective is if there's a certain side of me that starts coming out, be like, doesn't mean that this is a bad person, but they're triggering something in me, and I don't like who I'm becoming,
right,
and what I'm choosing to focus on when I'm around them.
Right.
So I need to also respect their time as well as my own.
Right.
Of recognizing my own and me not bringing something fruitful to a relationship.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop. I'll let
no.
go,
And even in that example of the Miami friend, we'll call her the Miami friend.
Yeah.
In that scenario, I had more questions about her profile than whoever this person was. I was like, oh, how did you arrive to this expectation? Even if I'm not saying if I agree or not, but it's interesting, right? Because it says so much about you. And I think having that awareness is really important.
Yeah.
Another reason why I have my clients do the green, red, yellow list is because it narrows down, clarity guides how you're going to take action.
Right.
For example, on your green list, if you're like, okay, I want someone who really cares about fitness, not how you look always, but like your health, like if that's a priority for you, what settings will not bring someone like that? Probably not going to find a guy at a club. Maybe fit people can work out. We know that, right? But, you know, like go to places where fit people will be found. So I think it kind of gives that clarity piece.
Mm-hmm.
We have that clarity conversation. We make the list and we shelf it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're obsessed with like, oh, it has to be this, or like, is he yellow right now or is he green? We're not having fun anymore with dating.
Yeah.
It's like an interview. And dating is just so draining. Not to say that it isn't, but it doesn't have to be that way. And again, you are what you attract. If you're a ball of angst looking through a checklist, like what are you really attracting here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's, again, proving the point of that there's everything is important in moderation, right? Like don't obsess over those red flags so much that it requires or that it makes you miss out on something. But I think this requires clarity of what it is that you want, but also who you are. So you can have a better sense of discernment in that choosing process. There's so many different things I want to open up on this.
Yeah. Like, for example, that client that I was working on, my recent client, she was talking about, I want a guy who's fit. I mean, of course, looking nice, having that chiseled abs is nice, but I want to be with someone who plays the long game of life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
They care about their health, which means they're going to care about the health of our children and its lifestyle. That's a bigger why in wanting someone to be fit than just chiseled abs. Right. And so, again, it says more about her and her values.
Well, and I think it's also exactly like the way the lifestyle is too. Because I remember in my very toxic relationship that I was in, I was young, so we were just two young, broken people who tried to make something work that didn't. No ill will for the guy. But like there was obviously a lot that we weren't compatible on. And I remember though, like also within dating culture, it's like if somebody really loves me, it shouldn't matter what I look like. And I think that's true. But if you stop doing the things that you did and how you looked before you got with that person, like I used to say, because I was super insecure and I would be like, if I got fat, would you still love me or would you leave me? Would you tell me? Because I was so against that. Like if I start getting fat, like you better not tell me. Now, because of how I am to my, like with my fitness and my nutrition, I would hope that the love of my life was loved and cared about me enough to want to make sure if they noticed I was getting unhealthy. There's communication is everything, right? But like for me, again, me seeing how they carry out and if they have that lifestyle of being healthy, that's important to me because that's also how I live my life. And if there's a point already, well, one, we're coming together and we're doing that. But if I start to derail from that, I have them to be like, babe, I love you. And I know that like things have been really, really hard, but like, let's remember like, hey, let's do this together, right? I would want somebody to help me grow and become a better person. That's personally what I'm seeking in a relationship, which is going to bring me to my next point as far as like when people are dating and somebody who has worked very, very hard on themselves and been very intentional with what that dating process has looked like. Now, again, I have probably plenty of red flags that has stopped me from pursuing some of the relationships that have come my way that I didn't. Cause like in the past 4.5 years, the longest that this is full transparency, I've maybe there was like 2 to 3 guys, maybe in the duration of this 4.5 years that I actually went on more than 2 dates with. Just because again, respecting of what it was that I was seeking. But a lot of that was because very much the growth that I have done in myself, and knowing exactly what it is that I want, where for me, I'm a strong woman of God and I have set with myself and I want to challenge anybody who's, also in the dating world to really sit, you hear all the time, like you have to love yourself or nobody else will. Okay, cool. Got it. But yeah, it's an ongoing process. So I hate that phrase. But what are you genuinely wanting a relationship for? And I think this is different for everybody. Again, going back to me being a woman of faith, for me, my main purpose on why I'm here on this planet is to serve and glorify the kingdom and do the work that God has called me to. So for me, if I'm dating somebody or if what I'm seeking in a spouse is I want to be better and stronger at serving God's kingdom with you than what I was without you.
Right.
So for me, it's I don't treat that as a red flag, is that if somebody isn't on that compatibility with me, then I'm better off being single because I know what it is that I'm here to do. And I want somebody who I can grow with. And yes, I want to be able to like have marriage and be able to experience that intimacy from that standpoint. But I have enough self-control to know that it is not fair for them or me if we don't have that same thing as our core of what we're sprinting to achieve. And so for other people, it's like, and again, just based off what I have seen from the times that I've been on dating apps, it's mind blowing on how many times I'll see like people where they're like, I don't really know what I want for my relationship goals, or I'm only looking for short-term goals. Okay, well, we're already not on the same plate.
Right.
Hey, that's not for me to judge you
Right.
of you having a red flag. Like maybe it's just because that's not really what you're seeking in your life right now. Right? Like if
Right.
people want commitment, like, or, and again, none of this is for me to be judging.
No,
But it's just,
not,
I
no.
think that male or female, wherever you're at on this, when you're dating, know what it is that you're actually wanting the relationship for. Is it just because you want somebody to fill the void? Is it that you're hoping you're going to have somebody that can come along and give you good sex and
Right.
pay your bills? Because you're the red flag, not them. I just think that there's so many different layers to it, but it goes back down to clarity, which is what we have literally boiled every single
Yes.
podcast back to, is just making space for clarity. What is it that you want and why do you want it? If you can't even answer that, how dare you expect somebody to fit the criteria of this physical list that you've mapped out for your red, yellow, or green flags?
We are all works in progress.
All the time.
But you have to be at least in the range of what you're asking for in
Yeah.
another person. In range, right?
Yeah. So, okay, based off that, I'm sorry I'm interrupting you.
No, please.
You said that you've been in your relationship for 4 years, right? Okay. So share what that was like when you guys first started dating. Like what was your expectation? What was his? Like let's walk through some red flags. Let's talk about that.
You know, the red flags were never the problem.
Okay.
The yellow flags.
Okay. So let's talk about
is
that.
tough because the red flags clearly, I think it's when there are red flags that get in the way, you either end the relationship or you don't get into it at all. The yellow flags are the things that you're constantly, and I would even say it pushes you into an orange range between the yellow and the red.
Here we go.
How much do I want to tolerate? How much do I want to compromise? Because it's not always a 50-50 compromise. How much do you even want to sacrifice? I say sacrifice because there are things where I feel like I had to give in to make it work. And there's things where I won't, and like refuse to budge. And he had to go all the way, And so I think the yellow flags for me is the tough thing because it keeps you there. But then it keeps you there.
What's really cool, you said that. Two things. One, you mentioned a big word, sacrifice. And I think that that's also what has happened with our dating culture because of the access we have to swiping so many people and the accessibility to the amount of singleness out there is that the light bulb went out in my bathroom. So now I'm just going to I'm going to move out and I'm going to buy a new home.
Yep.
Right? That is how we are approaching dating. It's that now all of a sudden we think that it is a red flag if this happens. And so now I'm not willing to sacrifice, so the relationship has to end. So I love that you actually went in and created clarity around what a yellow flag or even orange would be, rather than just fixating on this is the end all be all, because that's like that's again taking the red flag to the extreme and putting so much focus on that you're now missing the relationship because the red flag is giving you the out to bounce from the relationship. Yep. You did this, knew it, bye. It's keeping you safe from having to sacrifice, from having to work hard. But relationships take work. And a lot of people in the way our society makes relationships look, because you have the hashtag, relationship goals, hashtag couples who live together, stay together. Like, you know what I mean? Like this is creating that thinking that it's supposed to be perfect all the time, of people showing these TikToks of their relationship behind the scenes that are actually all just theatrical to get views. That's not their relationship all the time. They're only showing you the highlight reels. And so people aren't willing to work and sacrifice in relationships. So one, I think it's super, super awesome that you brought that part up of your willingness to work through that. The second thing that almost even came to my mind that I would like to encourage or throw out there, this nugget, have you ever listened to the relationship theory? It's Tom Bilyeu and his wife, Lisa Bilyeu. Tom also has impact theory, but those two, she's originally from Australia. He's here in the US. They've been married for 20 some plus years. She was a stay-at-home wife, but they don't have any kids because they've never wanted any. He was working all the time and she just kind of like sat at home. And they just have a very healthy view on how they do relationship. They have really, really hard conversations and they navigate it. So if any of you, I don't think they've posted any late episodes, but it's called Relationship Theory. But one of them that I remember watching back like 4 or 5 years ago is they talked, I don't know if they called it like the red zone or they called it red tape, but that was something that they together had a conversation on, that like, this is a hard no for me. That without a doubt, if we continue this relationship, like you need to understand that I'm never budging on this.
Right.
Are you okay with that? Because now they're also aware of what your expectation or what the red flag is. Because that's many of people bounce on a relationship by talking about a red flag, but never with that person. And now they're wondering what they did.
Right.
But if you simply would have communicated and worked through it, it could have been a really good thing. So yeah, their definition of like the red tape or red zone is it was like 2 or 3 things that were like an absolute non-negotiable. Like I will stick by your side no matter what. But this is one subject you can never try to change my mind about.
Right.
So say, and again, I'm using this as an example because it would be something I could, well, I wouldn't be able to relate this. It would be a red line for me of moving forward in a relationship. Like God has to be first in your life. Like if that is not the case and that is not what we are going to both be like leaning into to build and establish our relationship forever, this isn't going to work. That is my red line. Right. But say if somebody in a relationship would be like, I'm a Muslim and that is always going to be my belief system. And I love you and I don't require you, like say if that's their expectation and I don't require you to also be Muslim, you don't have to. But don't you ever try to cross that line and try to get me to not be Muslim because that is my red line.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to have a conversation to budge on any of that. If you're okay with that, then let's move forward. Right.
Okay. So having someone from a different faith would not be your red flag, as so long as they respect yours.
Oh, no. For me, it would very much have to be the same. But I was just using as an example.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that like if somebody that wouldn't be the case, but it would be their hard boundary or their hard line of like, I will love you no matter what, but this is one thing that I can't have you want to change about me.
I see.
So it's like that way it would be like, oh, well, this like whatever could be their red flag. Like, no. If you have that conversation with them and you can both agree with that. So kind of similar with when you went into like the yellow. So now that this is my yellow thing that I really would prefer you not do this.
Right.
But I'm willing to work with this or work with you through this.
Right.
Right. And I think when you can be transparent with that up front, but that takes time to also build a relationship. So many people in this red flag culture is they're shutting down the opportunity to actually even have a genuine conversation with somebody because they're piecing out because of a red flag.
Right. And there's some green flags that you may have valued in a previous season of your life.
Yes.
And you give someone a chance and you're like, I didn't even know I needed this and valued this.
Yes.
Like, my gosh, like I hear about it, but now I need this. And suddenly this red flag is actually not a red flag. It's not even yellow.
Yeah.
Maybe it's how I was interpreting that trait.
Yeah.
You know? And so it brings it back to you.
Yeah.
So what are some of the red flags that we keep hearing about that we're like, ugh, let's talk about it and let's just not read it? Get it?
Let's see if we can Google some of these.
Yeah.
While even like doing that, red flags in dating. Let's see what we got here.
I don't know if this is a red flag, but a client said this to me the other day that made me like, whoa, wake up even more, like just strikingly sit up. It was a male, 29 years old male. And he said, there are no good women anymore. Women just want to screw around, and women just want men to be these providers, and we are, but they're just not. There's substantial women don't exist anymore.
Okay,
like,
so she's saying that that's a red flag that he said that, or his red flag is women in general.
That's just his viewpoint on dating.
Okay.
And so this is somebody who has many he states many red flags, but that was how he started the conversation of, I want to find someone. I've been looking desperately, and that's leading me to like bad paths, but I just feel like there are no good women out there anymore.
Mm-hmm. And that's fair. So this is where I think I look at it, and then I'll be able to pull up some of these, because I think this will very much tie into that very well. So I'm glad that was the red flag that you shared. But for me, I'm always thinking of ways like what's in my control and how can I become better. So I think that's the other reason why I don't like the red flag, is because you're putting all of your eggs into their territory, into their basket, and expecting them to meet, again, all this criteria, but you not reflecting how you could be different. So for me, the way that I see that is, again, what I had said earlier, women, we need to do better. Like the fact that we are continuing, many are out there continuing to live a life that is making men feel that way. But men are obviously doing the same to women, right? So for me, as somebody who has, again, put a lot of time and work into herself, who also coaches a lot of people through communication, I should also be pretty good at it myself. Being a product of the product, I think, is important. But so like that being a red flag, some of these other ones, being secretive, ignoring your boundaries, call you names in arguments, behavior, gaslighting, love bombing, bashing their ex, substance abuse, their attitude changes on a dime. They feel jealous, inconsistency, isolation, moving too quickly. What? Like these are all red flags that now you're going to literally, again, walk away from something. How about you try to understand? I've had a situation where there was a guy who was like wanting to, like every day, wanting to see me. Old Jamie, who was super validated by like somebody, because I was so desperate for somebody to love me, I would have like eaten that out of the palm of my hand. Now I can be confident in having a conversation that like, hey, I really enjoy the time that we have together, but I want to also make sure that we set a solid foundation in how we move forward. Like, let's maybe not jump into trying to spend time together all the time. Like, there's two people in a relationship, like, so you still do have a say. If you communicate, then right, you can acknowledge there's a place for the boundary. If you acknowledge that they're ignoring your boundary, are you communicating that they're ignoring your boundary? Are they aware that that's a boundary of yours? Right? Like, so to this gentleman who says that all women are red flags, my thought would be like, listen, I am so sorry that you've had the experience that you have with women that you have. All as I can do as getting to know you is give you a chance to know me and see if I'm a fit for you. But what I won't do is I'm not going to constantly try to have to prove to myself that I'm not like those women. You know what I mean? But that takes self-awareness and growth to be able to know how to communicate that.
Right.
Because to me, like, have you ever heard the, it's like the quote where you can't expect someone to change if you're constantly throwing their past in their face. You know what I mean? And so it's like
Such a complicated statement.
yes. Like, because I mean, like, you have to protect your own heart, right? But if you're constantly like, remember that time you did this? Remember when you did that? I can't trust you because of this. How can you ever move forward at that? Like, to me, I'm open to having conversations, but one thing about it is to me, if there is a productive conversation around past relationships, I'm happy to talk about it. Past that, I don't care to know about their past.
Yep.
And I don't necessarily care if they know about mine, because guess what? I'm not that person anymore.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to have to sit here and feed you all of this information and give you a sense of ammunition for you to think that you have to worry about that. Like, I was in an abusive relationship where literally, like, my face was bashed up against a window while I was driving the car. I was pushed down the stairs. I was choked. I had to file police reports. I equally like shoved them, threw things at them. But to me, if I go out of my way to bring that up, like, now that gives somebody a reason to be concerned if all of a sudden they have a moment when things aren't going well. And now it's just adding unnecessary fuel to the fire. And now you're going to potentially judge me for a person that I used to be that I'm not anymore.
Right.
And then you're going to keep it in front of my face if you decide to call me out on it. Be like, oh, see, you're just acting like 20-year-old Jamie all over again.
Right.
And then that's just going to make me more mad.
Right.
Like, I think there's healthy ways to communicate it. And I think that there's a time and place for these conversations, because you should know this person that's going to be potentially your spouse for the rest of your life. But I just think that again, that whole red flag concept does that to people.
Mm.
It holds them freaking hostage to their past relationships, and it doesn't give them a new environment to grow.
You know what's interesting is when you were reading that list, I was like listening. I'm like, okay. My brain was telling me which one of these are red flags. Because for me, none of those were red flags. They're not
Cool.
okay. We're not normalizing things that should not be okay. Do not take less than what you deserve. But these are all things that could be solved and
Right.
communicated. And if that's, you
Exactly.
either move on or move forward with.
Yeah.
That's the sticky part is when we're in the middle, right? Like if you're moving on with somebody, or moving forward with somebody, work through the bullshit together,
Yeah.
right? Like you ever speak to me like that again, it's done.
Yeah.
And if it's done, you need to stick to your word and actually like, okay, this is not for me. I don't want this for my life. We're moving on. I'm not saying that someone should cuss you out in a fight, but that's something that you talk about.
Yeah.
And people are human.
Yeah.
Again, not okaying this, but
Well, and I think, we talk about definitions, right?
Right.
How we would define what a red flag is. To me, it's like if the red light comes on my dashboard for something with my car, that's an alert that there's something there, right?
Mhm.
And a chance for me to use that indicator to resolve the issue. Now, the issue could be one of two things. Either it's too expensive and I'm going to have to get a new car,
Yeah.
meaning X out of that potential relationship,
yeah.
or I go fix the car. And how I do that is by taking it into the shop and assessing the situation, right? Because one of them on there that maybe I would consider a red flag is name calling in an argument. I was in a relationship, the very toxic one, where we both would be like, you effing bitch, like whatever, like you're being such an asshole.
Yeah.
That was the environment of what I was used to in a relationship. So to me, I never thought of it being a good or a bad thing because it was what you did. And it was out of passion. You loved that person and it was contorted for me to think it was okay because we were angry. It wasn't until that other relationship that I was in, which was super healthy. Never once did we raise our voice towards each other. Never once did we name call each other. And it wasn't until that moment that I had somebody pull me out of that environment to experience something different. So now, again, there was a situation and there was a guy who was even jokingly was like, you fucking bitch. And I was like, I'm going to tell you I'm not okay with that. Like, if you're going to be my person, like, and we are best friends and we love each other so much, there would never be a reason for me to even jokingly say something negative about you. And then after that, he's like, dang, are you kidding me? Like, it wasn't that serious. Okay, no, thank you for showing me that this isn't going to work then because that's not what I'm seeking in a relationship.
Yeah.
So it gave the opportunity to assess the situation and for me to address it. And because they weren't willing to consider that, hey, maybe I shouldn't do that. That wasn't where my time was best spent.
Right.
So I chose to walk away from the situation.
Right. And how are you communicating that this communication is leading this other person? Again, it's not on you or anybody, but you're not communicating correctly if the other person feels like they need to raise their voice to get their point across.
Yeah.
It's on them too. They have
Yes.
it's 50-50. But I think for me, as somebody who sheepishly, I do get pretty intense in fights. I'm very explosive. I feel like that's how I can be heard sometimes. And that's actually the time that nobody starts listening to you at all. People start like muting you almost.
Yeah.
But I think like if the person is receptive, like say that gentleman, when you put up that boundary was like, I apologize. I was meaning it in a joke, but that's not okay. If it made you feel uncomfortable, I will not do that again. I think you would have been open
Absolutely.
to continuing.
Absolutely.
Right? It was a red flag when it happened. You put up that red tape, not red flag. Let's start changing our language.
Yes. Let's call them let's call it red tape instead of instead
You're
of
like,
red
hey,
flag.
red line. And if he would have respected that and was like, if I ever do anything like that again, let me know, aligning with you instead of like fighting with you, I think that relationship would have gone differently initially.
Yeah. And, I think even what was cool too about like what you had said, and I remember I used to be that woman who had like 2 pages worth
Oh, me too.
of my my super particular list of everything that this person needed to be in order to be my person. And I know for some people that's worked. And they said by creating that, they were able to literally find that exact person months later. That didn't work for me. But I think it was really cool too, how you mentioned that things at the time that you thought were a red flag actually became a green flag. again, my super healthy ex that I was with, like he changed my life, and he's very much the reason why like I have such high hopes for a healthy relationship, because he showed me what it was. And nothing but love and respect for the guy. But at the time, one of the red flags ish that I was like, he's just so quiet all the time. He's so quiet. Like, I'm such a loud person. Like, I'm too crazy energetic. Like, what if he's boring? What if I get bored? Right? That was my red flag. He brought so much peace to my life because he knew how to balance out that intensity in me. So he's the reason why I was able to have a discussion or a disagreement and seek a solution instead of raising my voice and losing my mind when I was upset. He's like, Jamie, I heard you. And I feel like you're taking this out on me. Is that what you're trying to do? Or is there something else going on that we should talk about?
Right.
Like, I owe that credit to him. But again, at the time, the green flag could have, or the red flag could have been that he was boring and that he was quiet, and just didn't have enough energy for me. But that red flag became a green flag in that relationship. So I think that that's also super important. The final thing, I guess, that I want to say, and then I'll let you close us out. Simon Sinek did,
love him.
Yes, he did a podcast with Tom Bilyeu. So the same gentleman. This one would have been on the impact theory, and they were talking about love. And this statement, I hope, helps somebody. He's like, I hate when people use the term fall in love. Like, because our society is, right? Because that's another way that we can show a highlight reel on social media, is this fairy tale story of how we met the one and we fell in love. And he goes, I don't believe that you fall in love. He goes, because if you fall into something, he's like, that's an accident. He goes, like, you fell down the stairs. That's typically how people treat that they fell in love. He goes, you don't fall in love, you grow in love. And so he asked this guy, and I think this is why I also have such a strong opinion on the red flag thing, is because he asked Tom, he goes, you've been married to your wife for 18 plus years. What was the moment that you knew she was the one? What was the moment that you fell in love with her? And he sat there and he's like, I don't know. He goes, right. Because instead you grew into love because you were focusing on all of the amazing qualities that she had, the things that you were attracted to in her, and you chose to put more focus on the good in her, that you grew to love her. You grew to continue that sense of trust and relationship and compatibility because you spent more time focusing on the good in the relationship than the bad. Where if, again, you're more concerned of like, if this doesn't happen, I'm out. You've already made your decision that you're out. Because now you're putting the ultimatum on this person that the second this happens, I'm not going to work with you on this.
Right.
So you're already getting yourself out of love before you give a chance to let yourself be in love.
Right.
But yeah, so I guess that's the final thing I wanted to share.
Yeah. I follow a coach on Instagram, Coach Annabelle, and she mentioned a story about how this girl asked this woman that she's been following all her life, saying like, how did you and your husband, like, how did you guys find each other? Like, it's such a wholesome relationship. How did you find each other? And she said, I didn't find him necessarily. I decided he was the love of my life.
So good.
Love is a choice, especially what you just outlined right there. It's a choice. It's a choice to say, I'm going to buy this house, and if a light bulb goes out, I'm going to figure out how to fix it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to buy another house. I'm going to remodel the bathroom if I have to, but this is my house.
Yeah.
And it's truly a choice, because I recently came to this conclusion. I don't think that, say you pick a person, there's always going to be someone better in a way, quote unquote.
Of course, of course.
Better in the sense that one human being cannot fulfill you.
Of course not.
Just can't.
That's not fair to put that pressure on a significant other to do so either. That's why you have to have other mentors and other friends and colleagues, because that is not fair to treat that person like a god, and that they're supposed to 100% know how to show up for you every moment of every day. That's not fair.
So you pick that set.
Yeah.
A person can be a 10, but that doesn't...
Isn't it like the 80-20 rule?
Yeah, definitely. So love is a choice. And let's choose to, of course, have our red tape, but let's steer away from the red flag, because it limits us from finding really cool stuff and exploring. Right? This is not a rehearsal. You have one go at your life.
Yeah. And I think going with that is the call to action I also challenge everybody to is to stop feeding into this, because it's like if you have kicking it back to the golden rule, right? If like you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Like stop spreading that poison of just bashing people and all the things that they do wrong. Because guess what? You're not perfect either.
Nope.
Like recognize it wasn't a fit and move on. But don't go out of your way to destroy somebody else just because it didn't work for you.
100%. Love it. Love it.
Choose to show up in love, whether that's somebody you get to be in a relationship with or not.
Yeah.
Love regardless, even if they're not the right person.
Yeah.
You don't have to like them. You don't have to spend time with them.
Nope.
But you also don't have to waste your energy destroying them either.
Or $1,000 in Miami.
We're good.